Good afternoon to all. A very warm welcome to this webinar commemorating International Day Against Violence and Bullying. The overarching theme of this webinar is violence and bullying at school, including cyberbullying. This session aims to raise awareness about the importance of creating safe and inclusive environments for students, addressing various forms of bullying, and promoting the right of every learner to education without violence and discrimination. This happens to be the theme of the webinar as well, to protect, educate, and empower. Learners call for a safe and inclusive schools. The keynote speaker of this webinar is Mr. Anandrao Vishnu Patil, sir, IAS, Additional Secretary, Department of School Education and Literacy, Government of India. We also have with us Mr. Manoj Srivastava, sir, Director Training, CBSE. Ms. Sarita Jadav, National Program Officer, UNESCO, South Asia Regional Office. Tim Curtis, Director and UNESCO representative to Bhutan, India, Maldives, and Sri Lanka, and Ms. Jenelle Babb, Regional Advisor, UNESCO, Bangkok. So now I would like to call upon Mr. Manoj Srivastava, sir, for his opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Swati. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of CBSE, I welcome everyone for this webinar, which we are organizing jointly with the help of UNESCO in commemoration of the International Day Against Violence and Bullying, including cyberbullying today. And as Dr. Swati was mentioning, the theme for the day and the webinar is really protect, educate, empower. Learners call for the safe and inclusive school. The webinar is being chaired by respected Shri Anandrao V. Patil, sir, in his absentia, who is Additional Secretary in the Department of School Education and Literacy, Government of India. We just figured it out that he is holding another meeting in the ministry, and he has conveyed his message that as soon as he is done with that meeting, he'll be joining us for his keynote speech, and we are keenly looking forward to listen to him now. We would welcome him on his joining, and his agreeing to be present, in a webinar like this, in a way demonstrate the commitment and the conviction on the part of the Government of India towards the overall welfare, physical and emotional well-being of the children across the country. And that can happen only through the collective endeavors. And I also need to tell the audience that this webinar is actually a result of the encouragement given by the Honorable Chairman CBSE, whom when I approached him about the plan to observe this particular day, considering its significance and importance, he immediately said, go ahead. And he also advised to issue a circular for the attention of all schools so that they can conduct a range of activities, befitting to the theme and occasion. We are deeply happy that, we are also joined by Mr. Tim Curtis, the Director UNESCO South Asia Regional Officer. I would be listening to him for the first time, and I am really very excited. And we also have Ms. Jenelle Babb, Regional Advisor, UNESCO Bangkok, and of course, Sarita Ji, with whom CBSE is working very, extensively and intensively on wide range of issues for the children welfare. And we welcome all the key representatives of the UNESCO in this webinar, and we would look forward to listen to them. I also welcome the heads of the department in the CBSE, the regional officers of the board, the heads of Center of Excellence in the CBSE, the esteemed principals, vice principals, teachers, students and school staff, and everyone for this webinar, which is so very relevant considering today's desperate time. And the webinar, as far as its structure is concerned, in its inaugural segment, we will have initial remarks starting from me to give, overall CBSE perspective in terms of the effort that action that we have taken in the recent time in the context of this very, very important topic. And we would then have Ms. Sarita Ji would be taking this webinar forward and also give an introduction of the key speakers and the rest of other things as has been planned for this webinar. As far as CBSE is concerned, I am very we have been collaborating with UNESCO in the past for various things. And last year, for the similar event, a short film titled Chuppi Todo, Break the Silence, was developed jointly, which focus on negative impact of bullying and violence on mental health of learner. And as I was mentioning earlier, the theme resonates with the board's comprehensive vision to create educational space in the school where students do feel very safe, secure, valued, and inspired to learn and grow. Schools, we have, very often say that they are the place second home for a student, and therefore there is absolutely no place for bullying and violence in the school. We all have been these phases of life, and we know that bad experiences, do affect children in many, many ways, right from performance in the school, but also in terms of mental health, overall self-esteem, and also the ability to see, to accept the life, so to say. And so therefore it becomes very important from that standpoint. School leaders and teachers and the counselors have to realize that they have roles beyond academic, and they are the first line of control. They are the first line of defense as far as this kind of menace is concerned. And therefore it is important and imperative that they must have those skills so that they are skilled enough to recognize the signs of bullying which are happening in their school, in the campuses, so that they can very timely intervene and support the student who may be suffering in silence. And therefore there is a responsibility for everyone out there. And therefore such a day, when we celebrate together, when we commemorate, we actually get a day for us to reaffirm our commitment so as to be more and more vigilant. CBSE is committed to empowering educators to meet these challenges, and we have those of you who would have participated in the program, 5 days residential program, which board has been conducting in partnership with the NCRT and UNESCO on school health and wellness. We have been inviting teachers from across the country to develop practical strategies to promote safety and inclusion. And one of the module also covers safety and security against violence and injuries in those 5 days residential program. Ministry of Education, if you could navigate the previous circulars and notification issued by the CBSE in the past, there is in your inbox, there would be detailed guidelines which were released by the Ministry of Education on, we call it Guidelines on School Safety and Security in 2021. And this actually serves as an effective roadmap for every school leader and administrator. And these guidelines, we being a body under the Ministry of Education, we have shared to all schools with the request to follow the instruction given therein. And so on this important day, I think in the CBSE system, as somebody who is a part of the overall education ecosystem, in whichever role we are having to have, and we are discharging the responsibility, let's all take a stand that we must lead by an example, and do everything that is small, big, to help eliminate the violence and bullying from a school system and even in the society also. We have, after talking to the people in the UNESCO, and Sarita ji was in regular touch with me, and then she requested that since UNESCO is observing 7th November as the International Day Against this menace, so we only deemed it appropriate to issue a circular for the attention of all our esteemed principals, so that they are encouraged to have some activities, in their school campuses. And the circular also, gives the web links for short film and some of the training material which are readily available that can be used for awareness among teachers and students. And I'm sure that today schools who are either attending this webinar, or if they're not attending the webinar, must be involved in some activities in one way or the other, utilizing the content of the circular and in their own way. Because as far as CBSE school systems are concerned, most of the schools are very proactive and very, very sensitive enough in all such matters in their school premises. And this is one thing which makes of the entire CBSE system very, very strong. And we feel deeply proud of all our school as far as CBSE system is concerned. And so let's work together, and so that we create a school where every child, every girl child, every child, junior or senior all feel safe. Every staff feels safe, valued, supported, and inspired, so that they achieve their fullest potential. And I thank you, Sarita ji, and all the UNESCO team who would be, sharing their perspectives with all of us. And I'm looking for the productive sessions. And then before I end, I think I should invite Sarita ji to tell us as to what is the next course of proceedings as far as this webinar is concerned. All the best. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Manoj sir. And we would like to thank the CBSE for partnering with UNESCO in organizing this very important webinar. Just as you requested, very quickly, I'd like to say that today's webinar has been structured into two parts. The inaugural session, which we are having right now, will be followed by a technical session. And in the inaugural session, we have Mr. Tim Curtis, who's the director of the UNESCO Regional Office for South Asia. He will be delivering the welcome address. Thereafter, we will be showing a small video, which will highlight the voices of the learners. And after that, Mr. Patil, Mr. Anandrao Vishnu Patil, the additional secretary, hopefully he should join us by then. He's just sent a message saying that he is joining us very briefly. He will be delivering the keynote speech. And the technical sessions after that will be facilitated by me and my colleague, Ms. Jenelle Babb from the UNESCO Bangkok. And without much further delay, I would now like to request Mr. Tim Curtis, Director of the UNESCO Regional Office for South Asia, to kindly deliver the welcome address. Over to you, Tim. Tim, you'll have to unmute yourself, please.
Sorry, I thought I'd already done it, but I'm unmuted now. Thank you, Sarita. So allow me to start by acknowledging Mr. Anandrao Patil, the Additional Secretary, Ministry of Education, Dr. Manoj Srivastava, Director of Training from the Central Board of Secondary Education, dear school leaders, participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is really a great honor and a pleasure for me to be here on behalf of UNESCO and give a warm welcome to everyone to have joined this webinar commemorating the International Day Against Violence and Bullying, including cyberbullying. I'd really like to start by commending the Ministry of Education and the Central Board of Secondary Education for highlighting this important day. It is truly a very serious issue around the world. A significant number of children and adolescents continue all over the world to face school violence and bullying, which now includes cyberbullying. And this, of course, adversely affects their health, well-being, and education. So a recent UNESCO report called Behind the Numbers, Ending School Violence and Bullying, which covered 144 countries, revealed that nearly a third of students have been physically assaulted at least once a year. And those who experience bullying are twice as likely to struggle with feelings of isolation and sometimes even suicidal thoughts. So this is a very important issue. And while some young people are beginning to voice their experiences, many are still suffering in silence. And we know that children who experience violence often struggle with concentration and cognitive development. This leads to lower academic performance, absenteeism, and in many cases, dropping out of school altogether. So children facing violence often experience anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem, which is perfectly normal, but which can persist into adulthood. The strain on mental health can therefore severely hinder their capacity to form healthy relationships and participate fully in society later. So the effects of bullying, therefore, reverberate even far beyond just the schools. So the theme for today's event, Protect, Educate, Empower, Learners Call for Safe and Inclusive Schools, resonates deeply with UNESCO's commitment to fostering inclusive, resilient, and equitable educational systems. Protecting learners means ensuring they are free from the physical, emotional, and harms that impede their development. Education, as was said by the director, goes beyond just academics to imparting essential life skills, empathy, and respect, and empowering young people about nurturing their voices and giving them the confidence to speak up. So in the context of this year's International Day Against Violence and Bullying, including cyberbullying, UNESCO released a new publication entitled Safe to Learn and Thrive, Ending Violence in and Through Education. And this publication draws on extensive global evidence and insights into the multifaceted nature and root causes of violence in education. and give some practical, actionable strategies to create safe, inclusive, and supportive learning environments. So eliminating violence is really a key part of ensuring safe and equitable education. And this has been adequately highlighted and very strongly highlighted in the National Education Policy 2020. So we congratulate again the Ministry of Education for developing the guidelines on school safety and security, which highlights the commitment of the Government of India to promote safe and inclusive school environments for all learners. We have thousands of school leaders who have joined the webinar today, and that's very encouraging. And I'd like to reiterate the critical role that principals and teachers play in preventing all forms of violence and fostering safe learning environments. Each of you is a leader, mentor, and guardian of the students entrusted to your care. As educators, you have the power to create a culture of empathy and inclusion, to model the behaviors that promote peace and mutual respect, and to take proactive steps to prevent bullying and violence. Today's webinar is a wonderful opportunity to reinforce these values and to empower you to make real differences in your schools and communities. We are very pleased to be collaborating with the Central Board of Secondary Education and the Ministry of Education for this important webinar. So let us all stand united in our vision to create a world where every child can learn, grow, and thrive in a safe and supportive learning environment. I'm confident that with your dedication, we will all build school communities where every student feels protected, educated, and empowered. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing the discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much for these inspiring words. And we continue to work with CBSE, with the ministry, with the state education departments in trying to see how schools can be more safe, more inclusive for all learners. And now moving on, we have developed a very small video. It's a short video, which is made in line with the theme of today's International Day. What we did is we reached out to a number of schools and we requested the school leaders and the principals to send us short videos which have voices of learners, of students who have actually asked and demanded and requested for safer and more inclusive schools free from violence. May I request Sudesh ma'am to kindly play the video, please.
As of 2019, 32% children were victims of bullying at least once a month. Is bullying such an important thing to do?
I have seen devastating impacts bullying can have on individuals. It can lead to trust issues, it can affect your academic performance and mental health.
It shatters confidence and isolates individuals.
Bullying not only affects the victims but also the entire school community.
I am bullied because of my short height.
I am bullied because I am fat.
I am bullied because of my dark complexion.
We don't want to go to school.
We students who consider our schools as a second home, and then if we face ragging, bullying, assaults, and a non-supportive environment, then there is no hope.
Let us stand together against bullying. Let's choose to lift each other up and not tear each other down.
Schools should be friendly with especially able and vulnerable students.
Inclusive schools are important for fostering supportive, equitable, and enriching environment.
Provide us an environment
where we feel heard
And not judged.
We demand protection from violence, harassment, and bullying in the school. Quality education is our right and safety is our priority.
Let's create a culture of respect, empathy, and inclusivity in our schools.
Protect our rights to learn. Learn without limits, live without fear.
Thank you, Sudesh ma'am. Sir, with your permission, okay. So it is our privilege to have with us Sri Anandrao Vishnu Patil, IAS, Additional Secretary, the Department of School Education and Literacy from the Ministry of Education. Despite his very busy schedule, he has consented to be with us for this webinar. And this not only highlights his personal commitment, but also the commitment of the Ministry of Education to promote safe, secure, and inclusive learning environments. May I request Sri Anandrao Patil ji to kindly deliver the keynote speech.
Sir, please unmute yourself.
We just spoke to his office. He's joining in a minute. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Over to you, sir.
Sir will be joining in a few minutes, ma'am.
I think in the meantime, we can move on to the next speaker so that sir is more comfortable when he's taking his session.
Okay, so should we start with the technical session and then in the meantime, sir joins?
I think that works. A small, somebody can.
Okay, in the meantime, while the additional secretary joins, I'll just give a very brief overview about why we are talking about this issue of school violence and bullying. And for the benefit of the viewers, for the school leaders, the centers of excellence, I'd like to say that a significant number of children and adolescents, not only in India, but around the world, face school bullying and violence, which also includes cyberbullying. And all these have an adverse effect on their health and well-being and their education. Since the last 3 decades, there has been an increasing awareness and recognition about the incidences of gender-based violence in schools and its negative consequences on the achievement of inclusive and equitable quality education and learning opportunities of children and adolescents who are affected. UNESCO member states declared the first Thursday of November as the International Day Against Violence and Bullying at School, including cyberbullying, recognizing that school-related violence in all its forms is an infringement of children's and adolescents' rights to education and their health and well-being. This International Day calls on learners, parents, members of the education communities, education authorities, and a range of sectors and partners, including the tech industry, to participate in preventing all forms of violence and foster safe learning environments that are essential for the health, well-being, and enhanced learning of children and youth. Now, when we say that education, we all know that education is a fundamental right, and it is critical in empowering and transforming the lives of children and adolescents, especially girls and learners who have other gender identities. A number of education settings are far from being a haven of peace and safety for millions of children and adolescents who experience violence, not only in schools, but also around schools. And I'd like to say that, when we talk about school violence, it infringes on a wide range of children's rights. It is complex, it is multifaceted, and the forms of violence are deeply rooted in unequal gender relations, gendered social norms, and discriminatory practices that are very prevalent in our societies. There have been a number of research studies which have actually shown that in general, boys and girls both face bullying and violence in schools. In case of boys, it could be more physical, and girls are very prone to verbal bullying, psychological bullying, and also at the risk of sexual violence. While research is a little scant and very limited in India, a study which was done by the Ministry of Women and Child in 13 states found that 50% of the children had faced emotional abuse and 69% had been subjected to physical abuse. Similarly, a study which was done by the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights found that corporal punishment was nearly universal in schools. Out of 6,600 children studied across 7 states, only 9 children reported not having had received any kind of punishment, as getting beaten with a cane, being slapped on the cheeks, being hit on the back, or boxed in the ears. And over here, we'd like to also highlight that bullying could be triggered by any form of difference due to caste, socioeconomic status, appearance, disability, level of performance in academics, sports, gender identity, and sexual orientation. I'd like to remind our dear viewers that this is not merely data. These are not merely statistics. Please remember that behind all this data, there is a human face. We often hear about cases where students have been molested. They have been sexually harassed by the peers or school staff. There is sometimes a lot of obscene talk. That a lot of students have complained saying that they are showed inappropriate videos and pictures, and they have reported this. Disability and other forms of disadvantage, such as economic, caste, poverty, lack of education, they make children very vulnerable at the risk of gender-based violence. And especially children who are from socioeconomic stratas face higher risk and they are subjected to violence. There have been online studies also. The Global Youth Online Behavior Study, which has been conducted by Microsoft, ranked India third in cyberbullying. And there have been instances where children pictures were morphed, they were uploaded on the internet. There has been hate mails, fake mails, bullying, etc., which is all happening online. Over here, I'd also like to share that UNESCO has been collaborating with the Government of India, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in strengthening the implementation of the School Health and Wellness Program. Many of you school leaders, principals, centers of excellence know that we are working very closely with CBSE and ensuring that the program reaches all the 30,000 schools which are affiliated to the Central Board of Secondary Education. Now, why am I mentioning about the school health program? Because the School Health and Wellness Program has focused on 11 different themes, very, very critical areas that are important for the life of an adolescent. But also, one of the themes clearly focuses on prevention of violence and injuries. And through this module, we have tried to address what is violence. Children should know what is violence. As of now, the understanding about violence, the knowledge about violence, the types of violence is extremely poor. So we want our learners to understand what is violence, types of violence, where does violence occur? It occurs in schools, on the way back home, on the way to schools. It also occurs in homes and communities, and it occurs on the cyberspace. We want that through this module, we want that our principals, our teachers should understand what are the negative effects of violence and bullying. It has such a detrimental effect. Children cannot participate properly. They have mental health issues such as stress, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. Again, lack of concentration. A child who is bullied and faces violence in school cannot participate in classroom activities. So it is important to keep the negative impacts of violence and bullying. We also want that our children should understand what is risky behavior and how can we be more responsible, and also what is the collective response to violence. When we talk about school violence and bullying, each one of us has a very important role to play in preventing and eliminating violence and bullying from our schools. I am very pleased to share that UNESCO, in partnership with the Government of India, with the Ministry, with the NCERT and CBSE, and with multiple partners, we have developed a number of tools to support you, to support principals, to support teachers, school leaders in addressing and preventing gender-based violence in schools, because we want to empower our students to feel secure, and we want to foster a respectful learning environment. In this relation, very quickly, I will tell you that yes, we have developed toolkits, training toolkits for teachers, for students, all focusing on what is violence, how can we prevent violence from happening in schools, how can we make our schools more safe, more inclusive. And these materials are available in Hindi and English and a lot of other Indian languages. There are a number of posters, there are a number of movies. As Manoj also shared, we made a movie with a film focusing on the mental health impact of violence and bullying in schools. We have a number of information, education, and communication materials. And all these resources reflect our collective commitment. And we want to equip all the principals, all the teachers, all the learners to take action against school violence. And we have to ensure that our students learn in environments where they feel protected and empowered. We really hope that all of you will find these tools useful in your daily efforts to build safe, respectable, and inclusive educational environments. And I also want to extend my deepest appreciation to each one of you, educators, school leaders, policymakers, and partners for your unwavering dedication to safeguarding the well-being and future of our learners. At UNESCO, we want to assure you that we stand beside you as allies, walking hand in hand on this crucial journey towards building schools that are not just centers of learning, but sanctuaries of safety, of inclusion, of growth. And our collective success hinges on a shared promise, the promise to protect and uplift every child, ensuring that they grow in an environment where they feel seen, where they feel heard, where they feel valued. When our learners are safe and nurtured, we will be able to unlock their fullest potential. And they will not only be scholars, but they will grow up as empathetic, empowered individuals who will shape a better and a kinder society. And together, when we work together with the government, with civil society, with CBSE, with educational institutions, we can make this vision a reality. And now it's wonderful to see you. It is actually a privilege to have with us Shri Anandrao Vishnu Patil IAS, Additional Secretary, the Department of School Education and Literacy from the Ministry of Education. And sir, thank you for joining us. We know you have a very, very hectic schedule. And despite that, you consented and agreed to be with us for this webinar. And thank you for your commitment. And we are really grateful for the commitment of the Ministry of Education to promote safe, secure, and inclusive learning environments. May I request you, sir, to kindly deliver the keynote speech. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Sarita ji. I apologize for joining late due to some other work. I congratulate CBSE and UNESCO for jointly organizing this webinar. It is a very, very important subject, and I think with the help of UNESCO, CBSE has done a wonderful work of organizing this seminar. I thank all the people who have joined this seminar, all the principals, the UNESCO officials, and all other participants. This is an International Day Against Violence and Bullying, including cyberbullying, under the theme of Protect, Educate, Empower. Learners call for safe and inclusive schools. I think very apt title for this. As you rightly told that there is no place in schools for violence. I must say that there is no place for violence in anybody's life. We should not at all allow that. And as the children's, if they get this education at the school level itself, that nobody should do any violence or commit violence against anybody, then only the world will be safe. As a child, if they learn, definitely it will go a long way in world peace. So we must teach the students that whatever issues are there, any problems are there, that can be sit together and discussed and it can be solved. But violence and bullying is a disease. It should not be at all handled by any of the child. This is my request to all the principals and teachers who are here. Violence in schools affects lives of students. Everybody, we are aware about that, impacting learning outcomes. The Government of India, we are working so hard in collaboration with the state governments, in collaboration with the NCRT, CBSE, KVs, and all other schools. More than 15 lakh schools in India. We are working for the learning outcomes. And 4th December, we are having this National Achievement Survey, which we call now as Parak Rashtriya Sarvekshan. So to see the learning outcomes of 3rd, 6th, and 9th standard. So much importance by Government of India for the learning outcomes of the children's. Same time, the things like violence or bullying create huge impact on the personalities of the children's. It may depress somebody, it may disillusion somebody, it may hurt somebody. So it directly impacts the learning outcomes and the outcomes, learning outcomes of the school as well as the country. So it is a earnest request to all the principals. Whenever you see any violence or bullying by any student, please counsel them. I'm not asking you to punish them. We must talk to those children. We should talk to those kids why they are doing like this and how it can be sorted out. They need some help. They need counseling. They need guidance. They need to understand how they can take out their frustration on anything else because of this. So this is the way I think we can educate our students. The schools we consider as the temples of knowledge, and it must be safe, inclusive, and a welcoming environment where learners can experience the joy of learning without fear. No child should ever feel unsafe, unloved, or isolated within the very walls of that are meant to nurture their growth and development. Despite significant progress, there are still incidents of bullying and violence in schools, which affect millions of learners, impacting their confidence, mental health, and ability to participate actively in the classrooms. So we request the teachers, particularly the headmasters who are joined today here, principals who joined here, to sensitize all the people in the ecosystem, school ecosystem, to understand how detrimental this for the progress of not only the individual student, but progress of the country. So it is very, very important that all the students should be taken care. Safety and security of student is a utmost priority for Government of India and Ministry of Education. In our ministry, with the collaboration of our sister ministry, that is Health and Family Welfare, we have launched a school health program, which includes dedicated theme on safety and security against violence and injuries. We are jointly working together for this. Aligned to the vision of National Youth Policy, the Department of School Education and Literacy, we have developed guidelines in 2021, that guidelines on school safety and security, which are very important. If you are not gone through this, please refer these guidelines, go through it and try to implement. Even you can try to improvise on these guidelines, and even you can inform us also what way it can work better, better way to make it practical. So we'll be more happy to get that. So this guideline should be utilized as a Bible and should be implemented in letter and spirit in the schools, and school environment has to be improved. These guidelines are critical step in strengthening the accountability among all stakeholders, that is the educators, parents, and society as a whole. That is what I call it as a ecosystem. So everybody in this ecosystem has to behave responsibly. They have to behave within these guidelines and should respect each other's freedom, individual freedom, and others' opinions also. Again, my ministry has sent these guidelines to all the states, all the education institutions in India, and we are requesting for the setting up of institutional mechanism and making schools free of bullying. We realize that this big task cannot be done by our ministry alone. We need UNESCO, we need CBSE, we need all the managements of the schools. Maybe it may be military schools, it may be Kendriya Vidyalayas, it may be state government schools or government aided or private schools. We request all of you to join us to implement these guidelines in letter and spirit till the last student, not only the first student, it should be till the last student in that in your enrollment. So nobody should get drop out because of the bullying or because of the violence. Nobody should bring down their grades, their marks, their learning outcomes because of this. So this is our earnest request. We realize that it is a big task, cannot be done by this department alone. So we need your collaboration of the schools, principals, teachers, education staff, and all the people working in this ecosystem. So we must act urgently and in a coordinated manner to transform schools into safe and protective spaces for everyone in the education sector. Sarita ji, again, you also raised one very important point is mental well-being. And today I happened to join one workshop in UNICEF. So it is very, very important topic. And again, it is my earnest request to all the principals and all the panelists here that it is very important to advise the parents about it, to advise the teachers, sensitize them, run some programs for them, and create an ecosystem where children can feel safe to speak out. Our NCRT Manodarpan cell has brought the theme called Let's Speak, which is very, very important thing. If you speak out whatever in your mind, I think many problems can be solved. The depression can be stopped, the complication can be stopped, even bullying can be stopped, this violence can be stopped. So it is very, very important to speak. So we request all the principals, all the schools who joined here to start the campaign of Let's Speak and try to speak, actually give the chance to children to speak. Maybe it can be one-to-one, it can be in a group, it can be a small group, it can be in the small clubs. So this will help the children to understand each other. This will help the teachers to understand the students, and it will give immense confidence to the students that the teachers are taking care of us, the school is taking care of us, the parents are understanding me, because there is huge generational gap. So parents may not be knowing what is required by the children at this age. So there is definitely some gap, some issues are coming. So we need to talk and understand the new generation. We need to guide them. We need to provide the life skills to these children's, upcoming children. And in the ministry, we strongly believe that not only few students, but all the students. We have 15 lakh schools and 25 crore children in India at this stage. So all these 25 crore children are very important for us. And we want all these children, they are not belong to their parents, they are not belong to their society or family only. They belong to the country. And we want them to have beautiful careers. We want them confident, learn the life skills, learn this academics better way, and choose their career path rightly with an informed path, we can say, career guidance. And they should contribute immensely to the GDP of this country, to the economy of this country, as well as the academics of the educational ecosystem of this country, which can be done only with the help of the states, with the help of the principals, with the help of the management. So we request you to collaborate with us in this beautiful journey and help us to create safe environment for all the students. Not only safe environment, they should feel from this day onwards, I am very important for this country. I'm not a child of XYZ parent, I'm a child of this nation. And I have an important role to play. And same way, another student also should see another student who is my counterpart, my peer, is also important for the country. So I should not do any violence against him. I should not do any bullying or cheating or any type of wrong things to anybody else, whether they are boy or girl. They're all equal, and they are son and daughters of this nation. So they should have equal rights. They should feel equally safe environment and give their 100% for this country. With these words, again, I congratulate CBSE and UNESCO. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and thank you so much for arranging this very, very important program, which is very important for this ministry. And I request all the principals to feel free to provide us feedback, to provide us insight, provide us suggestions on national education policy, if there is any issues implementation, or is there anything, say it is like Parak, I handle Parak also, we are having HPC. Anywhere you feel something has to be added, something has to be removed, something has to be modified, we are really willing to do that. We are open to all suggestions. We request UNESCO, we request CBSE, as well as all other the people who participated here, to provide us that valuable feedback. And once again, thank you so much. Jai Hind.
So much, sir. I think your remarks are really, really important. And thank you for highlighting that learning environments must be welcoming, they must be accessible, and they must be secure for all our learners. And since you also mentioned about the policies, I would really urge the principals, the educators to kindly go through the policy. Please try and develop a school bullying prevention plan for your schools. And because children spend 14 years of their life with you, almost 8,000 to 9,000 hours they are under your care. And we cannot afford that our schools are not safe. As sir mentioned, when we say that schools are temples of knowledge, they are temples of wisdom. But if our schools are not safe, where will our children go to? And I think sir also mentioned a very important point, that it takes a lot of courage for children to speak. They come to you with a lot of hope. What you say after the parents, I think children say that, okay, no, my teacher says this, my principal says this, so I'm going to listen. So please be mindful that you are in those positions of power, and all of us have a responsibility. We have a responsibility in making sure that our education systems, that our institutions are safe, that our children feel comfortable. Only then will they shine, only will they thrive, and only then they can be productive members of our country. So thank you so much, sir. We are so grateful to you for finding the time to be with us, sir. And we are very grateful to you, and we really look forward to working with the Ministry of Education. UNESCO also wants to work with CBSE. We have a beautiful collaboration with the CBSE, and we look forward to strengthening our partnership also with the Ministry of Education in not only safety and security, but many other topics that UNESCO also works in. So thank you so much, sir. And now moving on, Manoj sir, is it okay if we move to the presentation?
Yes, please. It is good
Okay,
that we
thank you,
have
sir.
Patil sir and we could listen to him.
Yes,
He was busy in a
absolutely,
meeting.
sir. We will. Ji, sir.
Yes, sir.
So now I hand over to my colleague, Ms. Jenelle Babb, who's the regional advisor from the UNESCO Bangkok office. And she focuses on education for health and well-being, based in the UNESCO multi-sectoral regional office in Bangkok. Over to you, Jenelle, and we will play your presentation right now.
Thank you so much, Sarita. And it's wonderful to have heard all the really inspiring and motivating words, and that really a powerful call to action for all of us joining this webinar from Additional Secretary Patil and also from Manoj and Tim as well. So thank you to you, thank you for that introduction, and thank you colleagues for bringing my slides up on screen and sharing it from your side. So to our distinguished representatives and officials from the Government of India, namely the Department of Education and Literacy, the Ministry of Education and CBSE, to all of our esteemed education practitioners, school leaders, teachers, joining today, dear colleagues from the UNESCO Regional Office in New Delhi, and all of our webinar participants joining online wherever you may be, good afternoon. It's my privilege to share just a few thoughts with you, and there will be a few because I think the richness of what you've heard so far is covering very many of the things that one would need to hold in their minds to motivate them to take action on what they know to address the issue of school violence. But I'm privileged nevertheless to be here with you and to share some insights from the work that UNESCO is doing and learning all the time from the ministries of education and education partners we work with all around the world on the issue of safe and welcoming learning environments, as together we commemorate this International Day against violence and bullying at school, including cyberbullying. Next slide, please. So the first place we want to start is acknowledging the pervasive nature of violence in schools. We've heard it all. It's not an issue that we have the privilege to bury our head in the sands about, and it's certainly not something that we are doing. So violence in education absolutely is pervasive. And it takes multiple forms, and some of these forms are more visible than others. And it affects learners, it affects school personnel, and all the members of the school community in different ways. The scale of violence is frankly quite shocking, and you can see some numbers on your screen that reflect that shocking scale. And this only makes our immediate action to address violence, both in education and through education, a critical imperative of this ambition for quality inclusive education. Next slide, please. School violence takes roots in various and intersecting drivers. So the root causes, the things that actually stimulate violence. And these can include harmful social and gender norms, but also inadequate laws and policies, as well as broader social and environmental dynamics, as well as factors related to education systems themselves. And it's worth saying that while I can present data like this to you, there actually is a huge gap in what we really know about the scale of violence in and around schools, including the ways in which violence is impacting different identities of young people, where that violence is happening, and then the impacts of that violence. We do have obviously a lot of data, and more of what we are measuring around about learning achievement is looking at that through the lens of young people's well-being, so we can actually see some of the relationship between young people's experiences in school, including violence, and the extent to which they learn or not learn and learn well. Next slide, please. School violence goes beyond the gates. We know this. Schools are often described as miniature mirrors of the society around them. So we need to work to end violence both in and through education. So the spaces where teaching and learning is happening, and through the teaching and learning process, the product of education itself. And of course, our discussions today in the webinar is really helping us to dig deeply into the role of the education sector at large, as well as the particular role of schools in ending violence. A holistic collective approach is essential to prevent and respond, and those two dimensions are important: prevent and respond to school violence, both in and through education. And we know that schools and education systems do not exist in a vacuum in and of themselves, and tackling violence requires collaboration across sectors and levels of society. And Assistant Secretary Patil just mentioned the learning ecosystem, and I really want to hold on to that idea. All of us encourage us to hold on to that idea in the front of our minds, because we need to look at this issue in a very, very intersectional, multi-layered way, because it's so complex and it involves many actions, many actors happening and working together to really make a positive difference. Next slide, please. So as we've seen from some of that data and already heard from the different speakers, there are many different types of violence. And it's really important that we recognize the ways in which violence presents itself. And Sarita, my colleague, also talked about this. There's actually an initiative called No Violence, KNOW, because if we can't agree on what constitutes violence, it actually is a barrier to taking the issue seriously and to taking action. There are behaviors that unfortunately we may accept or consider normalized in society. I said, no, that's not violence. It's just, people playing around, kids joking. Don't take it seriously. It's part of growing up. And it's things like that that actually work as barriers to young people speaking up and out, and us taking it on board in the actions of schools and learning to address this issue. So we see then that violence can be physical, it can be psychological, it can be sexual, and that they overlap with each other in complex ways. Violence can be something that happens in person, in the real world, that we can touch and feel and see, and also online. And the data that we do have focuses much more on physical violence and psychological violence, including bullying. And there's a reason why a lot of attention is paid to bullying in schools, because we know that it is the most pervasive expression of school violence. But it's very important, as we think about safe schools where no violence is tolerated, that we also acknowledge and take action and do not tolerate other expressions of violence that might be more subtle but equally pervasive, but also maybe very sensitive on which to engage, including about issues of sexual violence and harassment. Next slide, please. Intersectionality is also an important concept as we think about who is targeted by violence and also who perpetuates it. Violence in education is not uniform, and the experience of it is different depending on a person's identity as well as their socioeconomic status to which they belong, the category to which they belong. We know that gender, as my colleague Sarita has said, plays a particular role in how violence manifests and who experiences violence and how. And this could be sexualized violence against girls. It could be physical violence between boys, where harmful ideas of masculinity are at play, or it could be violence on the basis of gender identity and expression. And again, I want us to bear in mind that we're talking not just about peer violence, interpersonal violence that's between peers, such as bullying, but also violence that's happening between adults and children in the learning context. Gender inequality and harmful norms both contribute to violence and reinforce violence, both at a broader societal level and of course in schools as well. So this has really led to a greater attention to this gendered dimension of school violence over the past decade. And these acts are rooted in gender norms and stereotypes. And all violence, including gender-based violence, is perpetuated on the basis of unequal power. This is really important when we think about responses to school violence, that we acknowledge the role of unequal power in the expression of violence. And that is unequal power, whether it is explicit or real, in terms of who has what authority in the learning environment, but also it can be inequity of power that might be perceived. Sometimes we can look at, a little skinny child, or we can look at a boy and say, how can you be bullied by this this person or this girl or this, because we have a perception of who the bully is. But when we look at power and how inequities of power play out, sometimes it causes us to rethink our assumptions about who is the perpetrator and who is the target or the victim of violence. Next slide, please. Gender intersects with other characteristics of vulnerability or marginalization, as you can see on the screen here, including prevailing social norms that underpin negative beliefs or perceptions towards marginalized groups. And these intersections increase the likelihood of these individuals to experience violence and abuse. And if we want to have any success in our efforts, we need to take on board this intersectional lens in terms of preventing and responding to school violence. And some of these factors can include ethnicity, socioeconomic status, religious beliefs. It can even include how someone looks. And we heard the voices of young people telling us some of the basis for which they're targeted by harmful and hurtful words and actions in their learning contexts. So the good news is, it's not all doom and gloom. And, we've heard so much about the kinds of resources and actions that are available. But the truth is, we know from evidence what works to both prevent violence from happening in the first place, and what works to address violence before it escalates, before it establishes normalized behavior, before it has that intergenerational effect in terms of well-being and learning. Next slide, please. Next slide. So here then, we're interested in the holistic approach. So here, back to the learning ecosystem. And we've heard, of course, about the language of a whole school approach, which is one of the approaches that, the schools are under CBSE are already using in your school health interventions. And of course, we're reminded that whole school approaches sit within whole education systems approaches. And it's important to see the linkages between the two. So this holistic collective approach is really essential to prevent and respond to violence. And so what do we see here as making up the components of a whole school approach? And I don't think I'll be saying anything very surprising here, but maybe with the lens of school violence, we can take a deep dive into what the interventions would look like. Firstly, let's start with curricula, teaching and learning that really embeds social and emotional learning, life skills education, to help learners manage their emotions, recognize that violence is wrong, have a value for respectful, healthy, positive interpersonal relationships, and skills to peacefully resolve conflicts and disagreements. And social emotional learning is really vital to creating this culture of respect and inclusion and reducing the risk of violence, from preventing violence from happening in the first place. Then let's look at the school environment, where we want to really build up a positive school culture. Sarita talked about having plans for no violence in your school. And that plan, the first thing that plan would look like is, how do we address learner happiness, learner belonging, feeling welcome, everyone, not just learners, to be there, to feel happy, to be empowered as change makers, to want to come to school, to feel connected to each other and to learning. Learners themselves should actively participate in shaping this positive school culture, including the design and implementation of school codes of conduct that belong and feel owned by everyone in the learning environment. And of course, we heard about commitment and effective leadership, and you are the right people in this virtual room to talk about this issue of effective leadership and commitment, and really setting the tone for what is expected and desired in the school. Your role is so essential to effectiveness. In terms of education policy, laws, and systems, we want those to recognize the need for preventing and responding to school violence. And I've heard about the guidelines that are already available to your schools, and congratulate you on having those guidelines and being able to implement those. But really, implementation is really where the rubber hits the road, in terms of having a good intention in laws and policies and really seeing them bear fruit in the school and learning environment, and ensuring that they're sustainable and that they're supported with the right kinds of resources, including financial resources. And we need laws and policies to also look across sectors and to strengthen connections between education as well as child protection policies and procedures and systems. When violence does happen, we need to ensure that we have the appropriate reporting and response systems in place for those who are targeted. And again, I want to acknowledge the wise words of Additional Secretary to really ensure that responsive care is available not just for those who are targeted by the violence, who are victimized by the violence, but those who witness it and those who perpetrate it, because in their own way, they all need support and interventions. And that includes mechanisms for access to counseling and other kinds of services, whether provided in the school or referred out to the school. And of course, in keeping with appropriate law enforcement and reporting mechanisms and healthcare services. Partnerships so important across different kinds of actors to be able to do this work together. Collaboration is really key. Governments must align education with broader child protection systems, as I mentioned, while tech companies can help make digital spaces safer. And Sarita mentioned the importance of those kinds of private sector partners. Communities, including parents and families, must be engaged in violence prevention, ensuring that the efforts extend beyond the school environment and that the values established and behaviors established in the school are reinforced outside the school walls in families and communities. And of course, data and evidence generated through monitoring, evaluation, and research. Schools need strong systems to track the effectiveness of their interventions, their prevention and response programs, and collecting disaggregated data to help us all identify gaps, to ensure that interventions are impactful, that they're responsive and reaching the learners who need them. And regular monitoring, of course, helps keep us all accountable and it helps us see the return on our investment. Next slide, please. So really what we need to take action to really accelerate this holistic approach is a fundamental shift. From treating violence prevention and response as just separate issues floating around in the education space to really embedding them in the day-to-day core operations of learning spaces, whether that's formal or non-formal. And I think it's worth talking about non-formal education spaces as well. And only through such integrated approaches can we have the kind of sustained and impactful and transformative changes that we need. Next slide, please. So one of the key frameworks that I feel important to draw attention to as we talk about this holistic approach, and is the newest on the horizon and very powerful, is the new 2023 recommendation on education for peace, human rights, and sustainable development. And this was unanimously adopted by all 194 UNESCO member states last year. And this recommendation calls for learning environments to be welcoming, accessible, secure for everyone, particularly those from vulnerable and marginalized groups. And this includes protection from all forms of violence, physical, psychological, and digital, creating spaces where students feel respected and safe to learn. And of course, again, back to this culture of mutual respect and happiness, we're not only interested in the well-being of learners, but all practitioners, all persons who come to the school to work, to be there, and to connect with each other. Beyond learning environments, the recommendation, of course, is also interested in what young people learn. And we already talked about that, the power of curriculum and trained and supported teachers to deliver curricula with the right kind of impactful pedagogy. Next slide, please. So working across sectors and partnerships, as I mentioned, are really, really key because education can't do this alone. Okay, we can create a lovely bubble of schools, but schools, as you mentioned, exist within a larger ecosystem, and societal violence exists beyond what schools can do as well. So partnerships are really, really important. And here we're talking about, not only recognizing the power of education to transform lives, but really looking and drawing on the strengths of other actors and what already exists at a country level, at community level, at school level. This is a complex issue, violence. So we really need to bring multiple actions and actors to engage on the issue. And these are partnerships that have to be built on trust and open communication, which are really the key ingredients for successful engagement. And these partnerships should exist rather between different sectors, government and non-government, as well as between schools and families. And we need to also leverage partners around evidence, not just implementation, so that we can improve our programming in response and maximize our efforts. And finally, I just want to leave you with, in the last slide, my colleague Tim mentioned a new publication that was released just yesterday. And it was released actually in a satellite event in Colombia, which is a high-level, the first ever high-level ministerial meeting on violence against children. And in that space, UNESCO and its partners, Safe to Learn and the Coalition for Good Schools and UNGAI and other actors convened a specific session to look at this issue on education, because violence is education's business too. And this publication was launched at that event just yesterday. And I have the QR code on the screen there in case you want to scan it and have a look at it later in your own time to see some of the messages and ways in which we can all work together to enhance our efforts, building on what strengths already exist in school environments. We know that the need for action is urgent, and every day that passes without attention to the well-being and the safety and protection of learners and everyone in education is just another day of lost opportunity, lost potential, and also harmful, the compounding effects of harm. So the price of our inaction really is one that we want to not be able to spend and instead invest our efforts in accelerating what can work, what is working, and really the motivation that we all feel, recognizing that this is an important issue that's so central to quality education. Thank you, everyone. That's it from me. I'm very delighted to further engage with any questions or comments that you might have.
Thank you so much, Jenelle. That was fantastic. And I think just right on time, we had committed that, yes, we would finish this. And over to CBSE, Dr. Manoj Srivastava and his team.
There are three things which Patil sir has mentioned. One is that he has appealed all the schools that, they must be talking to the children, which was very, very important thing. When you do not talk, you do not know the problem. So continuous dialogue must be a regular feature in the school functioning. Then the second thing, sir said that that the regular capacity building and training of the teachers. He also mentioned that the children they belong to the nation, and if the government of India is focusing on a developed nation 2047, that means we will have to focus there also. So I need to mention to Patil sir, CBSE and UNESCO has been working on capacity building program on school health and wellness, and that program is very successful. And we do in batches of 100 people, where we invite principals and special educators and counselors from various schools. And then NCRT provides us the campus for residential accommodation. And there we conduct training program for 5 days. Sarita ji and her team, and she invite many experts from different fields, sir. And after that they get a certificate. And I was attending 2 programs at the inauguration, and almost every participant felt very happy about the program, sir. And I take this opportunity to request you, sir. One of the program is coming on, I think January or February, for batches of 100, sir. So we will invite you, sir, for inauguration of that program also. It will happen in NCRT campus.
Join
sir.
you.
Thank you,
We'll
sir.
be
Thank
more
you
than
so
happy
much.
to join you.
Thank you so much, sir. So we are very happy that you have joined, sir. And Swati, you can take it forward for the closure of the program today.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And as sir mentioned, it was a very insightful program for most of us. And now I will start extending my gratitude with Mr. Anandrao Vishnu Patil, sir. He's IAS Additional Secretary, Department of School Education and Literacy in Government of India, for his perceptive words. I also extend my gratitude and respect to Manoj, sir, Director Training. My appreciation for Ms. Sarita Jadav, Tim Curtis, and Jenelle Babb for the insightful and thoughtful understanding into bullying and its negative impact on students and their lives. In the end, I would like to thank all the participants who are watching us live to carry forward this learning of this webinar and follow it in their school system in identifying and supporting students who have been victim of bullying or who are being targeted by bullies. So with this, I would now, with sir's permission, I would like to end the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So
Thank you
much,
so much, sir.
Namaskar.